Welcome back to Vic's Projects, everyone. We're back on the Jag, and today we're going to carry on from where we left off, which is sorting out the back end. Well, this episode is going to be a little bit longer than normal. I'm sorry, it's taken a little bit longer than normal. Well, we've had a global pandemic, a little boy, and a fair few speed bumps along the way, as you'll see in the video. But I've decided to get with the times so that you guys can keep in touch with what's going on behind the scenes, see some progress, and all those sort of little bits that don't really make it into the videos. So I've decided to go on Instagram. Shock horror, I know, bear with me while I figure it out. So check it out. Yeah, give me a follow there. There's some cool pictures that I've already put up, and we'll be putting up content a lot more regularly than I can do with the YouTube videos. So we're not going to make much progress up here, shall we? So I best get changed and get under the car. So we've ground everything back in here, painted it up, put some seam sealer in, and we're all good to go. But before we do start actually assembling everything, what sort of paint did we use for under here and under the chassis? Now, time gone by, grandfather to father to son, it was always Hammerite is the best solid paint that you can get hold of. And now recently, they say don't use Hammerite for this sort of stuff. And it's because they actually changed the formula a little while back. So these used to be xylene based paints, but now I'm not quite sure what they use. I'll figure that out and put it there. So yes, Hammerite used to be really good because it was a xylene based paint. So I went on the internet and managed to find myself some xylene based paint. Now it's pretty toxic stuff, which is why they took it out of Hammerite to begin with. So if you do manage to get hold of it, make sure that you wear all the proper respiratory gear, so proper face masks and all of that, because it is, I mean, it's good stuff. That's why that's why we put it under here. But yeah, if you do get hold of it, be careful. All right, now that we're still alive, even after using our xylene based paint, let's start our reassembly. And the first job we need to do is put these guys straight in the bin. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. So on our brand new leaf springs, turns out these shackles are too wide, especially when you compare them to the old ones. So we've got a couple of options. Contact the seller and tell him his shit's been made wrong. Well, we did try that, and he got back to me and said, well, I've sold 200 of these, no one else has complained, so bugger off, basically. So he will give me a refund on them, but then I've got to try and package them up, send them back, go order some new ones, blah blah blah. So he claimed that, you know, this is how they're made. But when you actually compare this shackle with that shackle, it's clear that these have been manufactured to actually be a lot narrower to fit in that tongue. So I think someone's changed the manufacturing process, made it a bit cheaper, just put a bolt straight in there, cut down a couple of processes, and now that's too wide. So the next option we have is see if I can transfer the bolt from this shackle over to this one, because of the way it's put together. Might have to do a bit of angle grinding. The other option is take the head off of this guy and put a dab of weld in there just to hold it all together. We'll try the first one first, and then before we get a bit too drastic, actually hacking and chopping this guy. So there's no way I can return these now, now that we've chopped them up and welded them. Thanks Owen for letting me borrow the welder. So, a little bit of paint, and then we can carry on with the job we started, which was to actually get these into the car. Now it's on to sorting out the diff. So, as you may remember from one of the previous videos, this diff has actually got a little bit of backlash in it. It's not too bad, not the end of the world, but I would like to get it sorted. Now with the baby having arrived, my time to work on the car has shrunk. But I thought rather than try and learn all that myself, probably mess it up, I thought I'd actually just take this diff to the experts and just get them to set it all up nice for me. However, with it being locked down across the UK as well, and most of the world, the guys can't actually get the part that we need to sort this guy out. So I've gone and collected it, and we're just going to clean it up, put it back in the car, and then when the bits are available, we're going to take it up there and get them to sort it out. I know, I would have liked to just muck about, learn a few new skills, and have a play. But we've got plenty of other really cool things that we want to get on with this car, and I really want to get it back on the road. So that's what we're going to do. Clean it up, get it painted, and back in. Ta-da! Everything's so easy when it's on YouTube. So do you like the colour? Well, I do, and it's my car, so I can do what I like. So why did I paint this up silver? Well, under here, if this was just black, then it would just be a sea of black and a bit boring. So seeing as we're working under here, we're putting some effort in, we might as well make it a bit more jazzy, a bit nicer. It also matches the front suspension. So for those of you who've seen the other video where we did the whole front suspension, we powder coated the wishbones and the uprights in silver. So the equivalent for this light axle here is painting him in silver. So I think it matches quite well. Bit of a nice touch. So the next thing to do to get this guy together is these tie rods, or torque rods I think they're also called. So this guy lives here and connects to the chassis there. So what do these guys actually do? They stop this whole thing from twisting, so they resist the torque, hence why I think they're called torque rods sometimes. So before we get this guy bolted in, let's just step back in time and see how we prep them ready to go in the car. So prepping the tie rods before we can fit them in, we need to fit the metal elastic bushes. Now we've got a couple of options. We can use the press that we used before to actually get these out. It uses quite a lot of force and just precision guides these guys in. But I think we can do a little bit better than that. So we're going to try a little trick of heat on this guy to make that a little bit wider, and cooling this guy down so he's a little bit narrower, and hopefully that makes the slip in just that little bit easier. Now we're a bit time limited on this one because the wife is currently out, so we need to get these in the oven before she gets back. Well, get these in and out before she gets back anyway. So let's get these guys in there and these ones in the freezer. Well, 3 out of 4 ain't too bad. Well, actually, it's pretty rubbish, isn't it? So, we've tried the hot and cold treatment. That was actually pretty rubbish, if I'm honest. I probably wouldn't bother doing that again. We then tried the big vise. That was okay. I was getting a little bit worried that I might damage the vise, actually, the amount I was swinging off it. So, I've been round to a friend's, who's very kindly, Chris, thank you very much, lent me his bearing press tool. So we're going to get the impact wrench and show this guy his boss. That, did you see how much that was bending? Whew. He was not happy. There was no way that I was going to get that done on the vise, was there? So, I'm glad I didn't break your tool, Chris. Okay, let's get back to fitting this on the car. Now, before we get too carried away attaching this guy, I think we're going to have to fit the pan hard rod first. It's going to make our lives much easier. So this guy fits here, and that stops the diff moving back and forth. So new rubber's in him. Let's get him fixed. Now I won't do this up all the way, and I won't set up this guy properly until the car's actually all down on its wheels and sitting nice and properly. Getting these guys on might be a lot harder than they looked. So it looks like the trick was to use a jack on each leaf spring and not one on the centre of the diff. Oh, really? Really? So I was having trouble getting this guy here to align. And then I started looking at the diff and seeing it was all a bit not quite straight. And then I noticed this down here. So it looks like, if I compare it to the old shocks, these guys taper in here in order to miss this part of the diff which holds the shock together, and that's clashing with these new sodding suspension springs. Oh, these have been a nightmare throughout. So two options, I guess. We either trim the diff or we trim the new suspension. Either way, the angle grinder is coming out. So as per all YouTube projects, that was nice and easy. Just taking both springs out, trimming them down to fit, putting them back in. What a ball ache for springs that should just bolt in, away we go. So to put it into perspective, the amount of time that I actually get to play up here at the garage, it's been 6 weeks since I went to fit these springs. And we are literally back to square one of, well, where I should have been on that day that I came in here 6 months ago, of springs in and the diff bolted to it, because that's as far as we are. Anyway, if I was going to give any advice, the leaf springs from SG Components, no bueno. Well, they're in now, so let's get back to what we were doing, which was bolting up these guys. So that's the last one of these bolts in, and they are tricky. I'll spare you the gory details of all the filming of trying to manhandle this guy to get in. But the trick is, if you come to do this job yourself, is leverage. So this guy to go through the hole and move it around, and then this guy just to get on whatever you can get on to try and get these bolt holes to align. And then a little bit of persuasion, of course. But once you've done that, you get the glory stage of, we just simply put a lovely brand new nylock on it. Oh, it's so easy when it's on the internet. Well, that thread is ruined from all the bashing. So when you've got a damaged thread, it's really handy to have one of these tap and die sets. So you can just get the die you need and run it through and clean up those threads, and then the nut will go straight on. Well, at least that's one job that's easy. Woo, we're on to the fun bit now, reassembling each of the half shafts. So our first job is there's a little seal in here, looks a bit like that. Well, let's replace him. Well, that guy was pretty chewed up on the bottom, so it's a good job that we're replacing him with a nice shiny new one. Now, if you remember back to a couple of videos ago, we got this lovely new big socket. And good job we did, because it's absolutely perfect for drifting this guy home. You know this guy's home when you hear the note change. Oh, it's really hot. It's really hot. So now we're ready to put our axle back in. However, when we take a look at this bearing, he's a little bit unhappy. And I'm not surprised, especially this side, because when we'd done a long drive, maybe an hour or so, when we parked up, I'd actually find that that rear wheel would start to bind. And I think too much pressure has been put on this guy. It's been done up too tight. I'll show you that a little bit later about how that's done. So when this expands with the heat, it just gets all a bit too bound up, and yeah, killed this bearing. So we've got to get him off. I do actually have access now to a press at work, but that's not really in the spirit of this channel. So we're going to try and do it with a trusty old vise, a little bit of heat, and a bit of persuasion. Wish me luck. Oh. Why are you filming this? They weren't supposed to see this. There we go. It just tapped right off with a bit of heat. Okay, all right, so we cheated. But as I started giving this guy a bit of a whirly, it was clear that we were just going to end up damaging that. So sometimes it's good to actually use the right tool. And I'll tell you what, with a press, that made it so much easier. I could have, whilst I was there, just pressed the new bearing in. But again, it wouldn't be within the spirit of the channel. So what we're going to try doing is, and hopefully this one should work quite well, is actually putting this guy in the oven, heating him right up, and then he should just drop on. So time to head home and try that. Yes! Haha! Well, it's so nice when things actually work. I think that might be the first time in this bloody episode. Oh well. So now we've got the bearing on the half shaft, it's time to grease that up and then start our reassembly. So why was our original bearing so knackered in the first place? Well, I suspect, well, we've got the backlash and a diff, but also these half shafts are slightly biased in this direction. So actually this guy protrudes out a bit and that guy over there is actually a little bit loose. So we have spaces here to take up the slack, and this side already had quite a few spaces in it. That side only had 1 or 2. And I think what was happening, so before I'd go for a long drive and something would bind up in the back. I never really got to the bottom of it. I only did a few long drives. So, but what I think was happening was this guy was all too tight, which is why that bearing's shagged, bound up obviously, and just not a very happy place. So what I've done for now is I've taken one of the spacers from that side, put it onto this side. Hopefully that should do me for just a short trip to go and get the diff looked at properly by some grown-ups. And yeah, fingers crossed they can set it all up and have it all sitting nicely. So we've got our nice greasy fingers all over these. We're just going to give them a quick wipe off. So very thin film of grease stops moisture getting in and corroding. And we're back on reassembly. So things are starting to get there. Cool. Let's stop mucking about and just get on. So I think I'm going to build this up from the front to the back because that's probably going to be a bit easier to assemble. So the first thing is the outer oil seal, then we get a little paper gasket, then the brake carrier, and then we get our spacers. Next, the disc protector, I guess it is, dust guard. I can't remember what they call these. Someone will tell me in the comments. With the brakes going on, it feels like the end's in sight. Honestly, I can't believe this. I just went to put the prop in, and that is as far as it goes. It doesn't fit. And do you know why? These sodding leaf springs. So the distance from there to there is shorter than on the original ones. Oh my god. So we've got a couple of options. One, just burn the garage to the ground. Well, we really shouldn't do that. Two, get some new leaf springs. Do you know what? I really haven't got the patience or energy to do that. So I think for now, I'm just going to put the old leaf springs back in and be done with it. I am so disappointed with these ones from SC Components. Tell you what, let's pull them out and put them along side by side and have a look at every aspect that these were wrong. So let's take this in order, shall we? These shackles, I don't know, they were too wide, so they didn't actually fit within the tunnel, so we had to chop those down, put a dab of weld in. Okay, got that sorted. The next bit was these here waist down to actually fit on the diff, so we then had to take these out, trim this down. Now the prop shaft won't fit because if we take the center points here, this guy is longer in both directions, which then tips the whole diff forward. It was looking at a funny angle anyway, so that will be the cause of that. So clearly the guy's not going to accept these back now that we've hacked them apart. If you're out looking for a suspension, well, maybe these are for a slightly different car. Maybe there's a different setup back here. Someone in the comments, maybe let me know. But if I were you looking for springs or leaf springs, I wouldn't buy the ones from SC Components. Which ones would I buy? I don't know. Maybe at the end of the episode we'll actually get round to finding some replacements for these. But I think it's been nearly a year now since I started this job, so I'm just going to put the old ones back in, get the car back on the road, take the diff up to get that fixed so that we've got this bearing here and on the other side all tensioned properly, as well as the backlash in the diff, and get the car drivable again. And then, you know, in between stuff we can whip the springs out and getting pretty good at it by now. There's some different ones. Oh my god. So if I click my fingers like that, they magically appear in. Oh crap. Well, that was wishful thinking, Vic. Oh well, we're all back together now. Everything's all buttoned up underneath. So playing around with the exhaust, I think there's a little few things that we can do there. So good for you guys because another video, bad for me and my wallet. Speaking of bad for the wallet and good for the car, we've got brand new shock absorbers, both in the front and the rear, so they're adjustable, a lot nicer than the old ones were just ruined. And I think the old guy who had the car before me had just gone #race car and just turned them up to full damp. So I think that's why the ride was a little bit suspect before. But let's stop babbling and actually find out if it makes a difference. Oh, one thing, just for those who are curious, I've set the dampers to the middle setting, so you get a number of clicks, count them all the way around, and then back it up so you're halfway through. And then from there you can, you know, make it softer or harder depending what it feels like. Just a little tip on that one. Okay, I am really looking forward to getting this car back out on the road in, I think it's a year. So let's get to it. Well, it is lovely to have the car back on the road again. It seems to be driving quite nice. The suspension, the new shocks, I think they're about right. I may stiffen them up. I'll give it a little bit more time. But from here, it's time to drop her off at the garage and we can get some grown-ups to sort out our diff for us. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of X Projects, and check out the Instagram page or channel, or I don't know, what do you call those things? Check out the Instagram, and we'll see you next time on X Projects.